Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we finished up the Mercury program, but we're not quite done with the Vostok program. Of course, we also redesigned our Vostok launcher here a wee bit to be slightly more accurate to the actual launcher that was used. This thing has a wee bit of a thrust to weight problem, as in its thrust to weight is 1.19. It's definitely on the low side, but we've got this thing kitted out with a lot of engines here. We could hypothetically swap out some of these swivels for Reliance. We're currently on a 50-50 balance on that, but I don't feel like that's necessary. Let's just put this thing out on the pad, and let's see how this goes. Oh, I want to point out, I dropped the solid fuel up here. I want these to be fuel tanks. In some testing that I did off camera, when we were actually firing these solid rocket motors, they just instantly blow up. So we want them to be just fuel tanks. We're ignoring the solid fuel component of that. So we can actually turn the thrust limiter down to 0 as well. I don't think that actually does anything. But we can do that for now, and we're not going to be lifting that solid fuel either. So we're going to put this thing out on the pad. It's going to be slow. It's going to be slow off the pad. Not tremendously slow, I think. Well, 1.19 is pretty slow. It's not the slowest thing that we could make. That's for sure. It's not going to be super speedy. I feel like the Atlas rocket, at least within the confines of KSP, is a better design. But for now, we can go with this. Definitely slow off the pad. There is no doubt about that one. But off we go. And Jebediah is heading off into space on the Vostok 5 mission. Phenomenal. So we're just going to keep heading straight up here. We are just draining out this tank here. Interesting that it drains that tank first, and then it starts to drain these. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but it's not actually all that important. So we don't really care all that much. Now the question is, with the fins and with our swivel engines, just how well are we going to do on this gravity turn? And actually, that's feeling pretty decent. That's not feeling bad at all. Let's hop into maneuver mode here so we can see our apoapsis. Correcting our heading ever so slightly here. We're drifting northward at this moment, so I'm counteracting that a little bit. Okay. So that all looks good. The real question at this point is just how far does this rocket get? And I'm guessing quite a distance. Ooh, we're trying to tumble here a little bit. Specifically, we're trying to head over to flatten out our trajectory. But I've got it back under control now. Let's just walk to prograde for the time being. And we'll hold here until our apoapsis is 40, 50 kilometers, something like that. I want to get a little higher up. No doubt about that. Okay, we're at 40 kilometers right now. We're going to head on over to this prograde marker. Beautiful. Apoapsis is currently 50 kilometers. At this point, I just want to head directly on over to the horizon. Cool. No real aerodynamic issue there, although to be clear, I didn't really expect to have one. At least not on this trajectory. It's not wanting to settle in on the horizon very much. There we go. So we're going to have our side boosters falling off here in 3, 2, 1, 0. And there we go. An excellent, excellent decouple event. Unfortunately, we definitely are going to have a bit of a hard time holding attitude with this nonsense. There's no doubt about that. Our thrust to weight is very low, but look at how much delta V this thing has. This is a lot of delta V. No doubt about that. And we already have virtually all the orbital speed that we need. Not quite all, but pretty close. We're just going to keep burning here at the horizon until we are at an apoapsis of 100 kilometers. And then we'll look to circularize that, and we'll do some, like, Soviet flight planning after that. just to prove that they could do it too. Phenomenal. So we're just going to look to circularize here. There we go. How much power do we actually have in this? 450? Sure, that's fine. No problem. We should probably consider extending our antenna. And to be clear, this rocket is more powerful than its historical counterpart would be, right? This is more than enough to easily enter orbit of the moon. We're not going to do that. That was not something that was attempted in this time period. But that is definitely something that is within this rocket's capabilities. 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. So we can definitely see that this is going to be a low thrust to weight burn, right? This is definitely a pretty long burn. We have a lot of fuel in here. We certainly could do a moon flyby if we wanted to. Now that would kick the space race into high gear, but that is very anachronistic. We are not going to be doing that right now. I can tell you that at this moment. That would be definitely a bridge too far. But we have so much Delta V in this thing, we could do way more than just a moon flyby, a moon orbit. We could do a min-miss. We could almost do interplanetary with this level. We could probably do interplanetary with this level of Delta V. It's kind of insane. To be clear, things are easier in KSP. No doubt about that. Less Delta V required to do stuff in KSP. So that is fine. We are just going to proceed on through this burn here and get ourselves into an orbit. In reality, they completed 82 orbits in this particular flight. Again, I want to point out the primary achievement method in this time period was flight endurance. KSP doesn't reward that in any meaningful way at all, so that's not very useful for us. So we're just going to prove some orbital maneuvering here. Of course, we're completely capable of it. Okay, just getting us into slightly different positioning here. This is good enough. This orbit will do. Cool. So we can get a lot of places with this. This is definitely more Delta V than the Atlas rocket, and that was wildly overkill as well. So this thing can get us a lot of places in theory. Let's add a maneuver here at the periapsis, and let's just push this on up. So as a hypothetical, if we wanted to do a moon encounter, we have so much Delta V left. So much. This is going to be not even a sixth. This is like an eighth of our Delta V to get a moon encounter. If we wanted to do something interplanetary, like for example, go to Duna. We don't have an encounter here. The timing isn't perfect. But imagine there was an encounter here, right? That would be about the right inclination to do it. 1,200 meters per second. We could definitely do that with this rocket. So these are options that we have, but they're not options that we're going to take at this time. That is anachronistic, and it's not going to happen. So instead, we're going to push out almost to the moon orbit. Beautiful. So this burn is going to start up in about 40 seconds here. We're going to need to get turned over to it. We turn pretty slowly with this amount of fuel that we've got in here. No doubt about that. This is a crazy amount of fuel. Imagine a nuclear engine on here and this entire stage being oxidizer free. That would be an interesting development of this rocket. No doubt about that. So we're going to start this burn up in about 10 seconds. Ish. Okay, just fixing our heading here. There we go. And burn. So this would be about a 2-minute, 20-second burn. So we're going to physics warp. Okay. Apparently, we lose attitude when physics warping with this. I'm assuming that has to do with some sort of a bend developing in this. We do not lose attitude when not physics warping. Let's actually run a quick test on that. Yes. Can confirm. There's a bend that forms up here. Only during a physics warp. We could probably fix that by turning off the gimbal on this engine, I would guess, and having this be purely reaction wheel focused. Let's see. Yep, that does indeed fix it. Okay, so not bad for a shakedown there. We definitely get ourselves a nice little treat, I guess. As in, we learned that we don't want to have this gimbaling once we're in orbit. Good to know. Absolutely good to know. So let's just get all of this burn completed. We're just going to push up way further than we've ever pushed before. And we've got lots of delta V in this thing still. So much delta V. But we're going to go into a highly elliptical orbit. I am not going to circularize this. Let's just get into a circular orbit here, almost going out to the moon. To be clear, again, this is not a historical thing that happened. We're just doing this as a means of differentiation. This is good enough. I don't want an actual moon encounter here. We could get an actual moon encounter, and that would be non-ideal for right now. So then the question is, what happens if at the periapsis, actually, at the apoapsis, this is going to require very little delta V. At the apoapsis, we bring this in down to 40 kilometers. Then we're going to fine-tune this, and we're going to just do a re-entry profile. So essentially, this is just proving that this is capable of orbital maneuvers, right? That would be the idea here. Kind of a very, very similar concept to the MA-8 flight, except from the Soviet side. So we'll bring this down only 8 meters per second. That's going to be a very, very minor burn. Of course, we're changing our orbit in a very minor way, so this is unsurprising. But this is going to be a lot of speed that we built up on the way in. And then we're going to do a radial retrograde re-entry. 30 seconds. 20. 10. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Mark. Okay, we'll call that good enough. That'll do. Magnificent. So on this re-entry now, we're going to add a maneuver here, and we're going to bring this periapsis around. We're targeting a periapsis of somewhere around... This is actually an interesting setup that we have right here. I mean, that's technically an impact trajectory, so we would need to alter this slightly. We need to move it, I think, up over here. Maybe a bit much there. So we could back off on the retrograde slightly, and then we would bring this in to be somewhere around here-ish. I would like to have it be about here. And then we'll target this at 20 kilometers. Okay, so this is going to be a more energetic re-entry. I don't love where this apoapsis is, though. That's the thing. I'd like to bring this apoapsis more over this way, which would mean bringing... I mean, that's a lot of retrograde. I don't actually want that much retrograde. So we would need to bring the periapsis in over here then. Yeah, we would have to twist the orbit this way. There's no other way around it. Which is very sad. It's not the way I want that to go. We're just going to have to dial it in like that. That's not bad, though. Actually, that's really solid, now that I look at it. This is at what altitude? 61 kilometers. Yeah, this is good. I like this. This is a good re-entry. Cool, so we'll call that great, and we'll hop on over. We'll physics warp our turn, and very slowly head on over. We're going to have a lot of delta V left over, by the way. Like, a crazy amount of delta V still. This is an absolutely insane design. But Jeb is definitely getting a nice view of the moon. About as close as he's going to get without getting an actual encounter. So that's fine. Of course, if the moon were here, we would get an encounter, but luckily it's not. We wouldn't have chosen this particular trajectory if it was. But let's warp on over. We're going to slowly fall down to Kerbal. Letting that orbital velocity build up. Cool. So in we go here. This is, of course, going to be a radial retrograde burn, right? Not a pure retrograde, but you can see here quite a lot of speed as we come in. We're going to commence this burn in about 1 minute, 40 seconds, 30 seconds, 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Excellent. So this is going to be about a 2-minute burn. Are we going to physics warp it? I'm tempted to, but at the same time, I'm sitting here thinking problems could ensue if we hit the atmosphere with this shape in physics warp. We've got a little time before that. We'll just have to be pretty careful here. 75 kilometers. Okay, coming out of physics warp, we're going to be hitting atmosphere shortly. We're going to be in very thin atmosphere here, and we're heading over towards retrograde, right? So moving this closer and closer to retrograde. We just have so much delta V in this thing. It's absurd. This rocket could get basically anywhere. That's definitely the truth. Just imagine replacing all of this with a nuclear feed. We might have to try that at some point. We don't have the tech for that at this moment, but a Vostok rocket with the center stage changed to nuclear would be quite a thing. No doubt about that. Okay, I'm going to turn gimbal back on at this point. It's getting a little harder to hold attitude. That said, we're going to be ditching our fuel here shortly. Okay. We're going to hop over to retrograde. We're going to ditch this. There's a lot of fuel left in that. There's a lot of fuel left in this as well. But we're now in a very, very comfortable re-entry trajectory at this moment. And we're just very slowly drifting down. To be honest, we don't need this fuel either. So I'm going to ditch that as well, and we're going to come down just in our Onion re-entry module, which of course has a built-in heat shield. And you can see here we're already slowing down. Huge amounts of drag on that. Oh, we should probably retract our antenna. Not like we're going to recover it, but we'll retract it anyway. And we're decelerating. So let's hop into surface speed here. That's the more relevant number at this point. And are we going to get a land landing? That's something we need to ask. That's a hard maybe, but probably no. No, I think it's not going to happen. We should probably attempt to do that at some point if we're, actually going to go for that. But that's not going to happen this time. This is going to be a water landing. Unless we slow down a lot here. To be clear, we could have used our fuel to probably slow down a little faster than this and make it to this land. We're still pretty high up here. We are slowing down a decent amount, but it's not enough. 1,500 meters per second? 1,200? Yeah, I don't think we can fly all the way over there. We're, of course, going to have to bail out. And we'll do that, as usual, at 7 kilometers. 18 kilometers up right now. The land is in sight, so, that works, right? That's definitely close enough. We've got 8 kilometers now coming out of our physics warp. We're going to be bailing now. Okay, we'll deploy our chute. Yeah, land is kind of in sight. We're going to head towards the land as best we can, but we only have so far that we can glide, right? Land disappearing beneath the horizon here as we drop down on the globe. And as soon as our chute opens, we're going this way. There we go. Chute is open. We're going to continue to physics warp on our way down. Yeah, this is definitely the way that we want to be going here. We know that the land is this direction. I'm sure there's some Soviet recovery ships around here somewhere, right? That definitely seems right. It's a little dark here as well. I'm sure that'll help. Do we have a flashlight? We do not have a flashlight. Okay. Well, that's fine. It doesn't really matter all that much. And we can't turn on RCS while we have our chute open, which is a little sad. It would be interesting to be able to try to give ourselves additional altitude with that. I imagine that might be like a little broken, but that's fine. Cool. So we can try to get as much distance as we can towards the shore, but it's not going to be much. Like, we're not going to get the shore back into view, I don't think. It was visible from higher up, but this is how globes work. Hovering at about 100 meters up right now, we're shedding our speed currently and trading our speed for distance. Cool. Really trading our altitude for distance. Going to come out of physics warp here. And let's get ourselves a nice little splashdown. There we go. We can grab a surface sample, but I don't think we actually get that. And we'll recover this quote-unquote vessel. This is not really a vessel in any meaningful way. So we'll recover that. That's phenomenal. And we'll, of course, get our payment for the Vostok 5 flight, which actually I didn't mark off the MA9 flight. Let's definitely get that put in there. And then Vostok 5, done. Phenomenal. Let's get our payment, and then we are going to be ready at that point for Vostok 9. And Vostok 9 is, of course, going to be... We recovered a vessel that survived a flight? I mean, we recovered a Kerbal. Sure. Vostok 9, of course, is an important milestone. The first woman in space. So that is, of course, the job of Valentina. Let's give ourselves our pay for that last one. Phenomenal. And then, from there, we're at 31.1 science. That's not enough to get anything, which is sad. But we're going to hop into the VAB. And honestly, I don't think there are any changes that we need to make to this rocket. Although, really, if we wanted to be spicy, we could replace this swivel engine with a vacuum-optimized engine. That would be real spicy. It would hurt our takeoff thrust to weight. No doubt about that. By how much? 0.06. Which in the big scheme of things might not sound like much. But really, that's quite a lot in terms of percentage. We've got 0.19 to work with, right? And we lose basically a third of our thrust. Of our non-gravity equalized thrust, right? So it would be replaced, hypothetically, by a Terrier. So some of that would come back. At sea level, this would be not great thrust. Yeah, that doesn't even factor in. So this would definitely get a lot further once it got to space. Getting it to space would be another story, though. I don't think we're going to do that at this time. The real spice here would be putting in a nuclear engine. And then we would ditch all of this oxidizer, so these would take us even further. It'd be incredible. We don't have that tech at this point. It is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to do the final Vostok flight and get Valentina into orbit. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Andy McGar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12 UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.